friends, Jewel back with another astrology video, and I thought today we would address an aspect in the natal chart that I've been getting a lot of requests to cover. Seems to be a lot of interest in this one, and that is Sun square Pluto, and what happens when you see this in somebody's birth chart. So Pluto is our ego and our energy, our identity, our creativity, how we express ourselves, how we want others to see us. And Pluto represents the 8th house issues in our lives and that 8th house part of us. So Pluto is death, destruction, rejuvenation, sexuality, difficulties, crisis, our deep, deep desires, how we get our deepest needs met. And so when we have these two at odds, because a square is an aspect where two planets are trying to work something out, there's a lesson here between the two. So this one really is about learning self-control when you see this square in your chart or in somebody else's chart. Pluto is a very unconscious force that is always ever present, and the more you repress it, the more it's going to try to exert its influence. So the sun is, how we present ourselves in the world and a lot of what we identify as. So when these two are at war, you see a real conflict between domination and reception. Submission or aggression. They really alternate between feeling successful, the sun, and powerful, or stuck in their problems and hopeless and things are difficult, the Pluto. So they kind of wrestle with this. The conscious mind is in direct contact with the unconscious hidden in an aspect of tension when we have this square to Pluto. And anger, stewing frustration is something that is really common for these people to experience. And they will live with it for a little while and they will let it build and they blow. So they can be a little bit scary sometimes when they let their steam out, because there's a real force within them. And the more they let that build up, the bigger the explosion is going to be. So they can be a little bit intimidating to be around once you've experienced this. And they can be somewhat self-destructive a lot of the time when you have this. You can have a lot of other things going on in the chart that are actually working well, that are successful in a person. This is one thing I'm talking about here. I'm not branding anybody as self-destructive. So Pluto is destruction. And when it's in a constant aspect of tension to the sun, it's really talking about destruction of the ego, destruction of the identity, destruction of what someone sees themselves as or presents themselves as. And the identity has to really learn to accept the things of Pluto into it in a way that is healthy. Because the lesson is in they usually are bringing the unhealthy expression of Pluto into their identity, because it's a square, it's a conflict. They're learning. It's not a sentence. It is a lesson. So they need to learn how to handle dealing with authority especially within relationships, in a way that is healthy, where there's not this push-pull or this either-or between, okay, I'll either submit or I'm the one who gets my way. Because that can be this constant circle that they get stuck in. They need to break that by learning that their ego and their identity is not threatened by the authority or the power or the know-how of another. So there's nothing to defend against. They very often experienced a very powerful male figure. Sometimes it could be an abusive male figure, depending on the alignments. But it's very common for these people to have grown up with a father or an authority figure or a male figure that was strongly Mars or Pluto, or that could have had some controlling or violent tendencies or some difficulties of their own, that the child became angry about. Because this is really an aspect that shows a certain amount of stewing anger and unexpressed destructive habits that really come, or unacknowledged destructive habits that really come from an early experience of an angry environment or an angry male. So this is really about purging rage and negativity from the past, because Pluto's always going to represent things from the past that need to be destroyed in order to achieve something more successful in the present or going into the future. And they really become someone new and in control because they have faced instances in their life where they have been out of control. So because they have had this issue, they have the opportunity to work on it, so it can become a strength. So hard aspects are known as difficulties, but you have to understand that they can become strengths. They can become something that's positive in our chart if we work at it, if we acknowledge it, if we pay attention to it. And some hard aspects are harder to deal with than others. So the creativity within somebody, the expression within them, the realness, the authenticity of who they are comes to bear when they can really wrestle with and solve this aspect. So they become somebody who is very real and authentic in their expression, and they demand that from other people. They really learn to stand in their truth. And in doing that, that really gives people around them permission to do the same thing. And in fact, they demand that respectfully demand by their own being that be the case for everybody. And that is a relief when you can be in the presence of somebody that has that attitude. So this really is one that is about learning self-control through being out of control, or through experiencing controlling and submissive situations in their lives, so they have a chance to see what needs to be worked on within their own personality. And if this one can be solved, it actually lends to great depth of character. And these people are very enigmatic, whether they solve it or not. They tend to be very sexy, very enigmatic. Pluto aspects to the sun really create somebody who has a very covert identity. So it's almost like they don't want to reveal fully who they are. So people with their sun like square to Pluto or opposite to Pluto, they're very ambivalent about social media. You don't typically find them on Facebook. You don't typically find them on social media where their face or their identity can be exposed. Or if you do, they are really careful with how they manage that, and they go back and forth between being on and having people be able to find them, and no, I'm not going to do that. So It's actually really interesting to meet with these people too as clients, people that have strong, especially hard aspects, the opposition or the square from the Sun to Pluto, because they are so quiet and they really are looking for proof. They are kind of a lot of the time have this attitude of they want the world to prove to them, or they have something to prove to the world as well. So meeting with them is really interesting because they don't say a lot, and they have the same expressions, something like this. Okay. Like they're not sure about you. So really interesting people. Great depth of character. I actually really do enjoy people that have hard aspects between the Sun and Pluto because they tend to be deep and they tend to have experienced some hardships in life that have taught them some really important lessons that go towards making them very, very interesting. So, I hope you found this enjoyable. If you did, please subscribe to my channel if you've not done so. You can find me on the internet at truthandaspectastrology.com. Yes, I do private consultation. You can find me on Facebook at Truth and Aspect Astrology. I do the daily astrological weather forecast over there, birthday descriptions, writings. I specialize in relationship and intimacy astrology and asteroids and planetoids as well. So you can find my articles relating to those subjects over there. And I'll be back super soon. Bye-bye.